Good evening, Anchorpete here, and I'm with my wife, Shari T. And after what seems to be years of waiting, Dune has finally arrived. Shari, do you remember when we did our trailer review?
It's a long time ago.
Yeah. The title for that video says Dune 2020 on it.
Oh, yeah. Well, they changed.
Right. They kept pushing it back, right?
Date, yeah.
Yeah. So it's finally here. We just saw it in the theater, and now we're going to give you our review. I'm sure that not everyone has seen the movie, so at first we're going to start off without spoilers, and then we'll go into spoilers. But we will definitely give you a warning when we go into spoilers. And if this is your first time on the channel, hey, make sure that you like and subscribe. I talk about Dune a lot. My wife and I review movies quite often, and this should be fun. So, Shari, I know that was kind of a long movie, right? It was, what, like 2 hours and 40 minutes, almost 3 hours?
Yeah.
Yeah. As someone who's not really into sci-fi, right, did you find it to be confusing, or did you find like you didn't really know what was going on at any point?
It was a little bit confusing, but more because of the names of things. I thought the story was relatively easy to follow.
Yeah.
No, I don't really feel like I had that many problems.
Okay.
There was a little bit of confusion for me with like who was attacking.
Okay.
Kind of, and like what the different planets, kind of, but I think that's more because of the wording they used, and I wasn't familiar with the terms.
Sure. Since we're in non-spoiler territory, was there any character or actor that like really stood out to you that you liked their performance a lot?
I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I liked Jason Momoa.
I knew it. When we were sitting in the theater, I was like, Shari's going to say that she liked Jason Momoa. I knew it.
He was a charming devil.
Yes.
He was charming in this, and I found myself liking him. In case you don't know, I previously have not enjoyed Jason Momoa. I liked him in Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Okay, but he didn't do a whole lot, so.
Yeah. Jason Momoa, you know, he's not really a Shari kind of guy. You know, he's this sort of like biker,
he's too macho. Too macho for me.
Yeah, in like Aquaman and in other movies that have come out recently too. And I've kind of liked him. He started out on the show Stargate Atlantis, and he was kind of like the guy in this, where he's like a warrior, but he's just kind of charming. I thought he had like a swagger to him.
He does.
But in this, they fit him in this nice little role where like he wasn't just like super bro macho dude. He just had that charisma, and he was kind of an underdog for most of the movie too. So you felt for him, I thought. Yeah. When he first shows up, it's after there's been a lot of serious things, and he kind of talks the most like a regular person from our time. So I think he was kind of like a breath of fresh air when he came in.
Yeah, maybe so. He kind of lightened up the movie. Do you want to say what we thought of the movie?
Yeah.
Let's say what we thought of the movie, and also you can say if you thought any performances stood out.
Sure. Do you want to go first? Or you want me to go first?
You go first.
Okay. So I said this to Shari when we were driving home. We tried not to talk about the movie too much, but I said that
it was torture.
No, that's not what I said. I said that I wish that I could have watched that movie on the biggest screen possible, you know, in a theater, but with no one else there with me. Because I feel like not a lot of people are huge Dune fans. I want everyone to enjoy the movie, but I just feel like this movie's not made for everyone. It's the kind of movie where I think if you're thinking Star Wars, you're going to be kind of bored. I saw at least one kid in the theater, and I was like, this is not a movie for kids. It's pretty dense. And I think that you have to have a love of Dune to appreciate it.
Yeah, it was more. It's not that I was expecting anything lighthearted, but it was pretty serious, and it takes its time. It's kind of slow moving, which I don't necessarily have a problem with that, but I don't know that it's exactly what mainstream popcorn audiences are looking for. Yeah. So it's a little bit heavier.
Yes, absolutely. Denis Villeneuve, we have seen, I think his previous movie before this was Blade Runner 2049. And, there's our little girl. Do you want to?
I'll be right back.
Make a point. You go address it real quick. Hopefully, Shari will hear me talking loudly enough to chime in on this. But Denis Villeneuve's last movie that I think we saw, I don't think Arrival came out after Blade Runner. I think Blade Runner was his last one before this. Blade Runner 2049 also took its time. And I remember seeing it with, my brother-in-law and his wife and my wife, and I know that like that one scene, for instance, when Ryan Gosling goes and finds this one little carving in this factory. I remember that like the people next to me felt like they were dying because it was just taking so long for them. So I would say that this kind of had that similar pace. Here's a mild spoiler. Paul has a lot of visions throughout the movie, and I think that for people that don't know the Dune books, it's probably pretty confusing with all the visions. And so I bet that probably tested a general audience's patience. While Sherry's coming back too, we had a little bit of a conversation about will this movie be a success or not? And I want it to be, because I want more movies like it, but I kind of think that it's not going to be that successful. So
as far as making money?
As far as like getting people like that, all of a sudden they're going to be tweeting about Dune, and it's going to be Facebook, and it's going to be memes, and having that kind of feeling like Midnight Mass just had or Squid Game had, right? I don't think it's going to have that effect.
Yeah, I don't know about that. It kind of reminds me of Blade Runner, the sequel that he just directed a couple of years ago. Is that what you were saying?
I was just talking about that when you went to go see Clem.
Like Blade Runner, the original, has like so much cult following that I don't know that second movie that he made really could live up to it.
Yeah.
And I don't know that it didn't. It wasn't that it was a bad movie. What's it called? Blade Runner?
The newest one?
Yeah.
Blade Runner 2049.
Yeah, it wasn't a bad movie. It was interesting and it was good.
Yeah.
But and that's how this felt, kind of. It felt like this is not a bad movie. I thought this was interesting and good, but I don't know if it's going to stick with me and go down as some sort of legend.
Okay.
Which is how I felt about the Blade Runner. And I know you really like Arrival, but I feel exactly the same way. It seems to me that this is his type of movie. Like he makes these kind of serious, dense movies. They're more slow moving. They seem to do well in the box office, but I'm just sort of surprised that they do because I don't know. They're not blockbuster movies.
Right. I think about one other director too, when I think of Denis Villeneuve. And god dang, I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but he also did Ex Machina and he did Annihilation, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm gonna remember his name.
I actually think those are better movies than the Denis Villeneuve movies we're talking about. I think both of those are better if that's the same director.
Okay, but I think that like all of these movies, this Dune movie we just saw, Annihilation, Arrival, Ex Machina, and Blade Runner 2049, I think they are all like beautiful, serious science fiction movies that are not hokey. They're not like winking at the camera. And ultimately, I don't think they catch on with the mass audience. I think like people like you and I appreciate them on different levels, but it's just not, it doesn't click with everyone, I don't think. Mm-hmm. Which is unfortunate because they look amazing. This movie looked incredible. It looked like they spent like $400 million making this movie.
Yeah, it is beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, just like there's scenes that are just like straight out of my imagination, like reading the Dune books, like when they would just be like all waiting for like a ship to show up and then the drawbridge would drop down and people would walk out. That was just like, oh my God, that is a book cover. That's a Dune book cover. That's what I see in my imagination.
There were a lot of shots of people coming out of ships. I was going to say planes, ships, whatever they are. Yeah. There was a lot of shots. I mean, I want to say at least 8 or 9 probably shots.
At least.
And to me, the problem with, yes, those are beautiful shots. And I love watching everyone's hair blow and the mom's beautiful gown and blowing. And I do like, by the way, the idea of the royalty that their family is. I think all that was pretty interesting. But every time the ship opened and they came out, I kind of want something more to happen. And it was usually not that exciting an event that they were walking into.
Yeah.
So that kind of bothered me. I'm like, all this spectacle, all this beauty, all this fanfare. And then what are they walking off into? I don't know. They're greeting like one soldier from the planet or something. Right. I don't know.
Well, so that brings up something I was thinking
about. It's like build up to what?
Right. Well, that's what I was thinking about, right? Because the Dune book came out in 1965, and Frank Herbert did this thing where he made like a whole universe of stuff. And it's not just like, oh, there's a planet and there's spice on it and there's worms. It's not just that. There's like all different types of things that he's made, right? Like from scratch. It's like Star Wars, but even Star Wars needed at least 3 movies to like build that kind of universe, right? Mm-hmm. And so,
yeah, they're definitely world building like crazy here, and I kind of got a pretty good grasp on this new world. I was sort of immersed in it by the time the movie ends.
Right. Well, what I was thinking though was what makes that world building really sink its teeth into fans. Like, 'cause I kept sitting there thinking, like, what's going to make this appealing to you? I know that I'm already sold, right? I'm already here. And I was like, well, Game of Thrones, right? The first Ice and Fire book sets up that whole world, right? And it pulls people in, and it's got complex shit, and there's different things going on. And I think that it comes out to the dialogue and the characters, right?
Yes.
Now, this has incredible characters. And there's lines of dialogue that are taken straight from the book, but I don't think it's that sort of witty, funny kind of dialogue that you have in like Game of Thrones, right? That clever dialogue that catches people.
Yeah.
And there's no kind of depravity. Like, I think it's a very dark movie and brutal movie, but when someone gets their throat cut, it's like off screen, right?
It's PG-13.
Right. And I think that actually this could have benefited from being like a little bit more violent and gruesome and like trying to make it more like Blade Runner 2049 versus.
I don't know that it needed that. I didn't have a problem with that. I guess I just wanted it to matter more when something happened to someone. I kind of think one of the big flaws here is that the main characters aren't interesting enough.
Well, okay.
Paul.
Okay. Yeah.
Isn't he a little bit boring?
Here's the problem. I feel like, no offense to Timothée Chalamet, but I feel like he's very miscast in this role.
Maybe so. I wasn't feeling it.
He's a great actor.
I actually really like him, yeah.
Yeah. But here's the thing. Paul Atreides has been in 2 other versions, right? There's, of course, Kyle MacLachlan in the 1984 David Lynch version, and then the Sci-Fi Channel had a miniseries in 2000, and he's played by a guy named Alec Newman, right? Kyle MacLachlan in particular, when he's Dale Cooper in Twin Peaks or in that role as Paul, has this kind of sense of wonder and wanting to like learn about things. Whereas Timothée Chalamet kind of plays this sort of like withdrawn, like, I don't know how to explain it. Like he doesn't have this sort of like sense of wonder. There's little flashes of it, but in general, he doesn't have that like, tell me everything, let me learn everything.
Is that how the character is supposed to be?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
No, yeah, he's kind of attitudey. He's kind of like this sullen teenager. I mean, maybe sullen's a little strong, but he doesn't smile ever. No. Let's put it that way. And
he does a couple times.
He smiles at Duncan.
Yeah.
He smiles at Duncan several times. And he has like a few bear hugs with Duncan.
Yes.
And that's the most emotion he shows in the movie. It's with Duncan, which is kind of funny, I think.
Yeah.
He was more like a father than his own father. So, yeah. Yeah, he was kind of teenagery, which is maybe okay, but I don't know that it made him the most likable character.
Right.
And we're supposed to get this sense that he is the chosen one.
Right.
And I guess that sense comes from him having these prophetic dreams.
Yes.
But other than that, I just wasn't feeling it.
Yeah. Well, can that kind of be our segue into spoilers? Because there's something I kind of want to talk about with that.
Okay.
Okay, guys. So from this point on, we're at 13 minutes in. This is now spoiler central. Please go see the movie on HBO Max or in a theater and come back to us, okay? Here we go. So when I was talking about Kyle MacLachlan being so eager to learn things when he's Paul Atreides, right? That is such a critical part of that character because he is like the culmination of all these different groups kind of like making this perfect person, right? Did you get any of that from the stuff with like the sisterhood? Did any of that kind of click?
That he was the culmination of a bunch of groups?
No,
I got that.
Like, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I got that. The
Bene Gesserit?
They call her like by a nun name.
Oh, the Reverend Mother?
Yeah, that's a nun thing.
Well, they're like nuns.
Okay, you say that, but then why is the mom married? She was one of them.
Okay. You ready?
Yeah.
I'll make it real quick and painless.
Okay.
So what's really cool about Dune is that those Bene Gesserit sisters are like nuns and they're like advisors, but they also become concubines for royalty. And they kind of alluded to that in this movie, right? But I guess it was kind of unclear, right? But one of the things that they do is that they like twist the bloodlines so that they can like make this ultimate person. And Jessica was supposed to bear a daughter who would like lead towards this perfect person being born, but she chose to have a son, and that was Paul.
Yeah, you had explained that part about the mom's choice to have a son so she can control the sex of her baby.
They can do all kinds of crazy things. They can literally change the sex of their baby. Yes.
Why? Okay, so this is the thing I don't totally understand.
Yeah.
Why don't they think that one of these Bene Jesuits, what are they called?
Bene Gesserit?
Bene Gesserit sisters. Why don't they think one of them is the one? They can do amazing things. There is something in this movie that's super cool that I really liked, which is the voice.
Yes.
Commands.
Yes. Let's talk about that.
I loved that.
We'll get to those.
But
other
that's
points.
what the Bene Gesserit sisters can do. They're the ones who can do the voice thing. They can like do a command in this certain type of voice that makes anybody do whatever they want.
Yes.
Which is, I mean, that's fucking powerful.
Yes, and I really, really liked the use of the voice in this.
Yes, I enjoyed it. And she's teaching it to Paul in that like opening scene where they're just having breakfast, and she's like, "If you want the glass of water, like use the voice and get it."
Right.
And he can't do it. He hasn't perfected it yet. I really enjoyed that. I would have liked to see more of that.
Yeah.
And I don't understand why these women aren't kind of considered more important or more revered. Why is Paul when his mom can do that?
Well, you're not gonna like this, Shari, but like the idea is that there would be like a male person that is born, and he's called the Kwisatz Haderach. They say his name in the movie.
Do you mean for the Fremen? Or are you saying every different race has their own version of the one, and it has to be a man for all the different races?
No. So there's only one race, right? They're all human. It's just that they're all different versions, right? The Fremen are kind of like a different version of humans.
I know they're all human. I'm talking about their different planets and things.
Right, they're different groups, right?
Yeah.
The Bene Gesserit are trying to make this guy called the Kwisatz Haderach. And the whole idea is that he can have these visions of the future. But one other cool thing that they don't allude to in this movie at all is that they actually retain the memories of the people that came before them. So you have this like link to the past, and you can see the future.
The Giver.
Yes. Okay, yeah, that's a good comparison. But that's just one way that Paul's this ultimate guy, right? The other thing that you're kind of talking about is how the Fremen kept saying, "Oh, he's special, right?" That's because the Fremen have this prophecy that there's going to be this special guy that comes to called the Mahdi. Mm-hmm. And so he's like checking off that box for the Fremen, and he's the Bene Gesserit thing, right?
Why is he checking off the box? So what is he doing? He dressed like them? He instinctively wore his suit in a way. That's only
the Fremen suit, yeah.
Yeah, that's the only thing I saw where they commented like, "Ooh."
So one thing they alluded to in this movie, the Reverend Mother says, "Hey, we did everything we could on Arrakis for you," and it was like they were kind of like manipulating the Fremen to think that their Kwisatz Haderach is the same thing as their thing. You know what I'm saying? It's like they're kind of combining all the religions together, and all this stuff is like real in-depth stuff, and it's all in that first friggin' book. And this movie, this is only the first half of that fucking book.
Well, I can see why they split it in two now, because there's a lot of information just in this one movie.
Yeah. I mean, that Sci-Fi Channel miniseries was 6 hours. It was 3 parts, and that was the first book.
Yeah.
And the David Lynch movie, they crammed everything in.
Probably a mistake, because it's like it would be hard to understand. Now, I did understand pretty much everything in this movie, but it's probably because they took their freaking sweet time and showed it all. But that's what, going back to what you're saying, it's kind of more slow moving, dense information.
But there's all this other stuff that like they kind of allude to, but you don't really get it. Which is like, do you remember that one guy that served their house who like he was kind of like an African American guy, but he had like freckles, and they threw for Hawa. Do you remember him? He's like, "Oh, I failed you." At one point. So that guy, do you remember his eyes went like white in his head? Mm-hmm. He's like a special kind of person called the Mentat.
He did some math, and his eyes rolled back white. I was like, "Ooh, he's doing some serious math."
Well, did you notice no one had like computers and shit, right?
Yeah.
There's no computers in this future of 10,191. They just have like super advanced people. So he's like a computer. And he trained Paul, and that's another reason why Paul's special. And then Duncan is this like badass, amazing swordsman, and he trained Paul. So it's like everybody is like making Paul into like this amazing person.
Let's not forget the mom.
And well, the mom is the main one.
Well, I mean, but that's the sad thing. No one gives these women credit, it seems like. I mean, yes, the Reverend Mother is the Emperor's advisor, so that's probably a pretty high position. Yeah. But all the women below her, including the woman who's supposed to bear the chosen one, is treated, they call her a concubine.
Yeah. Well, that's because they kind of do their things in secret too. They're not like all up in everybody's face with their plans.
Well, anyone who knows they can do that voice thing should kind of be like kissing their butts a little.
Well, I thought that you would like that. I thought you would like the dynamic of the son and the mom together.
Yeah, and I think that is not something you see every day in a lot of movies where a mom and a son are kind of off on an adventure together because the father gets killed.
Right.
And
and we're in spoilers. So.
Jessica and Paul escape together, and they kind of have a little bit of second part of the movie is them running around together. And
right.
Yeah, I did think that was unusual. I mean, you get clues that that's going to happen from all the trailers.
Right.
How do you feel about their relationship?
It's like super interesting because she, out of love for the Duke, made him be a boy, and she's very scared because she thinks that the Bene Gesserits will kill Paul because of what he is, and that almost happens with that whole box scene.
Yeah,
so she has that protective mother nature thing, but she's also this great teacher for him, and they have this very, very close relationship.
See, I don't know if I saw that in the movie. I didn't really see like this love between the mother and father.
That's bad because their love should be like beaming like neon lights.
Did you think they like showed that? They held hands at one point.
He touched like the back of her neck at one point.
Okay, that's it though.
Right. Yeah.
It's not much, and we find out she's pregnant in this movie, and we never saw a scene between them or anything talking about that, which I thought might have helped.
Yeah, that's a flaw. Because like in every version of Dune, it's like their love for each other is very apparent. It's not like this romantic, corny love, but she supports him and he like deeply loves her.
Okay, well, yeah, I just didn't really see that. I kind of knew that maybe from backstory that you've told me, but I didn't really see it. I also didn't necessarily see. I saw like a lot of bonding between the father and Paul.
Yeah.
I saw the mom teaching Paul, but I didn't necessarily see a lot of. No, she was loving to him. I'll take that back. He just was sort of shitty to her, maybe.
Yeah, he just is this kind of like rude kid. And I almost wish they could have had Kyle MacLachlan come back and just de-age him for the whole movie and have him be Paul. Because, man, that would have elevated this movie.
Okay, well, maybe Timothée Chalamet will get a little bit more opportunity to do some stellar acting in part 2. I don't know if this was a good showcase for him.
I think that at this point they have decided to make part 2. Like, it was always sort of a gamble. Are they going to make part 2?
Are you serious?
Yeah,
Why would they even make this first movie and leave it on the note they did without planning a part 2?
Yeah, that they were, like, playing it to the, close to the chest, so to speak, to see if they were going to make it or not.
I'm sure it was always going to.
It was always planned?
Yeah, because you couldn't end the movie like this without, and they even, like, announced it as part 1.
Yeah. But I always feel like that might have been, like, a last-minute decision to put the part 1 in
I guess it's wording. They could add whatever they wanted.
What I was going to say, though, was that I feel like Paul's visions were kind of misleading in the advertising, right? Because they show a lot of stuff from his visions in the advertising for this movie.
Yeah.
So they make you think that certain things are going to happen. And it's like, no, they're going to happen in the next movie.
Yeah.
That's like the ultimate Marvel thing. You know how Marvel always puts their little next time in the end credits kind of scene?
No, I don't see them. I don't watch those movies.
You don't watch Marvel movies, but like I feel like this was the ultimate Marvel movie because it's like next time on Dune, we're gonna get this.
It's not a Marvel movie though, because I'm telling you, I paid attention. There wasn't a battle scene until an hour and 20 minutes in.
Oh yeah,
which is a pretty long time to make the audience wait. I was fine with that personally.
Marvel is so prevalent in science fiction and like big budget movies now. It's such a big influence that you are expecting people to make like silly jokes and stuff, or like, there to be a serious scene followed by someone being like making a joke about it. But that's not this at all. This is just like straight up. Yeah,
but they did there was only a couple of jokes and they put those in the trailer trying to sell you in that way. It's tricky because it's not that kind of movie.
No. It's actually very bleak,
Yeah, it's depressing. So the House of Atreides falls pretty much. They get beat. They are set up. They're sent to Fremen Island
Fremen Island.
It's anything but an island. It's a desert.
I mean, it kind of is like an island if you think of the sand as water.
Okay, right? I'm gonna say another thing I like.
Go ahead.
I like the worm scenes.
Mm-hmm.
They're appropriately suspenseful and tense, and I was excited about the worm coming up. I guess the worm ate that giant harvester.
It did.
It eats machinery.
Yeah, I mean, it's gigantic. Yeah.
Why would it want to eat that?
I mean, that's a whole big thing in itself.
Okay. It's kind of like a whale or something. It just eats whatever goes in, I guess. So I thought that was a pretty cool scene. I liked that. And then there's another scene where the worm almost gets him and his mom, Paul and his mom, and that was, I enjoyed those. I thought that was a good thing, like to have, whatever, suspenseful. I liked that better than any of the battle scenes.
I'm glad that you did like that, because in particular, that first scene where you see the worm and the harvester, what I really liked about that was that it kind of felt like it was taking place in the modern day, like with the guys kind of talking over the radios, and they would show like the dials and stuff on their ship a lot, right? And there's many scenes in this movie that are straight from the book, and there's many scenes that are like, they almost are like the same as the David Lynch scenes, right? And it's interesting to see this scene because it's in the David Lynch one too, but it just felt like really grounded and realistic, which that's kind of crazy considering that this takes place on another planet in the year 10,191, right? But you had that sense of like, this is a crew working on this harvester. They're about to have an emergency. They were very practical about how they were going to save them. I just really like that scene a lot.
I do too.
Yeah.
Although Paul kind of does a damsel in distress thing. He like gets out of the ship to go try to collect the people in the harvester to save them. And then he just starts having a vision and almost destroys the whole mission. Yeah,
I think because he was so close to so much spice, it like kind of triggered something in him. And
by the way, his eyes never go blue in this movie.
Right, well, but that's part of the marketing that's misleading, because they show him with blue eyes multiple times.
But he was just having a vision, because what I'm getting from his visions is that his I'm not going to say his fantasy, but it sort of seems like his like dream is to become a leader of the Fremen and to get a snort all the spice he wants and to make Zendaya his girlfriend, dream girl. That's mostly what's in the visions. I'm sorry.
Right.
It's him bonding with the Fremen and hanging out with Zendaya.
Right. Well, did you see that one vision in particular where he went to his home planet and they were like on his ship and he was right next to Zendaya? Mm-hmm. Chani is her name too.
Okay.
And
I don't think they say that in this movie.
Her name?
Yes.
They say it at the end when she shows up.
She introduces herself?
She doesn't. Like Stilgar says, Chani, go do this.
Okay.
And then Paul says Chani to her too.
Okay.
Anyway, there's that one sequence where they're like standing on a ship and they're looking down and she's right next to him and he's got the blue Fremen eyes, But it is that kind of misleading thing in the commercials.
I don't know. I sort of feel like it's a little trite that's what he's dreaming of is a girl.
Right. Well,
for such a serious thing where, races are being wiped out and you're thinking about a girl?
Well,
I'm not saying love isn't important and powerful. It just, I don't know. It felt trite to me.
It kind of ties in with something that is controversial about Dune and people worried about before this movie came out, which there's that idea of like the white man coming to the, like, I guess more primitive civilization and like, taking over or being like the hero. Have you ever heard of that? White savior. White savior. Right. And people think that Dune is like that because Paul is like this white guy that goes to the Fremen, and the Fremen are sort of labeled as like Middle Eastern kind of thing.
So in the book they go into the colors of their skin?
No, but with science fiction, there's like little clues and stuff that make you think of certain ethnicities. The Fremen always kind of come off as like Middle Eastern, no matter what version. I was thinking about like Native Americans and how Columbus came here and conquered, and that seemed to be what's happening to the Fremen. Right. And so with Paul, people think it's like, oh, it's another like Dances with Wolves kind of thing, or it's another Last Samurai with Tom Cruise kind of situation, right? With him and the Fremen. Okay. And with the Fremen, they made them all different ethnicities too. There's like Javier Bardem he's Mexican or is he Spanish? I think he's Spanish. Spanish, okay. And then, then there's a couple of African American actors or all different ethnicities, right? Not just like one people. And but they're not white, right? I don't know if I saw any white Fremen. Maybe not. Okay. But so that's the kind of thing is that people think, oh well, Paul is this white savior, right? But when you read the books, even in the first book, it kind of alludes that maybe he's kind of villainous, that he's leading to something. And they kind of allude to it in this movie, right? With that his Paul visions. Yeah. That he's going to become this sort of revolutionary that could have kind of a violent revolution, right?
I didn't get that, but okay.
Well, remember, like, he had one of those visions and there was like this pile of corpses that was just on fire.
I thought he was just seeing bad things that are going to happen.
Yeah. Well, that's what they eventually are alluding to, is that he's going to take over and do that. And here's a little spoiler for you. Did you notice that they showed a mouse a lot, like a little mouse in the desert?
Of course I did.
Yeah. So
it was cute. It had big ears.
Yeah.
And it was sweating. A sweating mouse.
He asked the Fremen. They didn't show it in this movie, but I'm sure in part 2 he will. You know, he's like, "What's the name of the mouse?" Because he has to have like a special Fremen name, and they're like, "The mouse is called Muad'Dib," and then that's Paul's name is Paul Muad'Dib.
He's named after a mouse. That's
what he chose. Yes. Yes. Okay, I can tell by your side. You're like, okay, maybe we should wrap this up. Can I just say 2 more things?
Yeah.
So, you know, everything is awesome. The way that the costumes are designed, the ships, everything, the landscapes.
You mean the visuals?
Visually, this movie is stunning. But one of the things that got me is the villains. They call them Harkonnens. I always call them Harkonnens, but like they are just fucking dark and disturbing in this. They're all bald, right? What'd you think of?
The only bald people I saw was that big fat guy who was really disgusting and eating all the time.
Right.
And then his nephew, who was played by the Guardians of the Galaxy guy.
That's right, Dave Bautista, right?
Okay, so
he's playing
I couldn't tell you who else the Harkonnens were. I mean, their servant girls were bald.
Right. But then, shit, I forgot this one actor's name. He's in other Denis Villeneuve movies too, but he played that guy that was like an advisor to the Baron. Do you remember him? He was kind of balding too.
Yeah.
But I thought he was great in this as well.
Great is such a strong word. Like, I don't know about great. I thought who's the big fat guy? The Baron?
That's Stellan Skarsgård playing the Baron.
Right. I thought he was effective. It's kind of like Jabba the Hutt, though. You don't think he's kind of modeled on Jabba the Hutt, or maybe
the Baron is from 1965.
Maybe they modeled Jabba the Hutt on him then.
There's a lot of Dune definitely influenced Star Wars, that's for sure.
Okay, because he's like always eating and all big and fat and gross, yes. And like the Jabba the Hutt's played that way too.
Yeah, I agree. I'm sure that the Baron is influenced on Jabba the Hutt, but like there's something that Denis Villeneuve just does excellently, where it's like this blending of like the sound and visuals. Like whenever he would float, he had this thing on his spine, like, and these
what was that?
It was like a thing that was like a repulsor, like it would like lift him up.
Yeah, why did he have that in his back?
To like make him float, make him like.
Why is that?
Because he's so fat he can't walk.
Oh, it's like a wheelchair.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
I didn't understand that. I was wondering what was in his back.
But it's like little details that always make me want to come back to movies, like where it's like you see the little lights glow on the back, and it would make this one little noise, and then he would like rise up. You know, I love little stuff like that. I thought that Dave Bautista was kind of wasted in this. They kind of set it up so it's like, oh, he'll be bigger in the next one. But one last thing, Shari, and I'll shut up about all this, is that there's stuff that's in the other versions of Dune that they didn't have in this, and it's like, oh man, they're saving all that for the next movie. Like, you know how they kept referring to the Emperor?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, the Emperor is in the beginning of the book too, but they just didn't show him in this movie at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure he's gonna be the main thing of the next book, right? And
the next film.
The next film, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
And then also, the Baron has 2 nephews, and in the David Lynch version, the other nephew's played by Sting, right? And he's like a counterpart to Paul, where he's almost like the equal to Paul.
So is he going to come in?
Yeah, I mean, they didn't show him at all in this one, so I think they're going to show him in the next one.
Yeah, this movie definitely felt like part 1.
Right.
Just prepping you. Prepping you for what's to come. I don't know if that's so great, though.
It's not for people that aren't in love with these books.
You should want a 2.5-hour movie to be able to stand on its own.
Right.
And it just felt like, let me like give you all the precursor information and save like, I guess, a lot of the action for the second part of the movie. I don't know. There's action in this, but you always talk about exposition.
Yeah.
This movie's full of it.
It's full of exposition, but I felt like there was not as much talking to explain things as you think.
Well, he watched like a home movie, some home movies.
He did have that.
There's some home movies a few times that did the exposition for him.
Yeah, that is true. And there is a little narration from Zendaya, like right when. Oh, that's one other thing we should bring up too. Isn't that fucking weird? Like that weird voice that came on before the credits came on, right? It was just like it said like dreams are like a sign of something deeper or
something from the deep.
Something from the deep. And it's like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah, if you saw this movie in a theater, like let us know if you got that. It's something that comes on before the words like legendary, the names of the studios.
The studios, right.
So at first I was like, this is part of the movie, but then the names of the studios came on and I was kind of confused if it was meant to come prior.
Yeah.
Because usually a movie doesn't start until after the names of the studios, right?
Yeah.
You might hear music for the movie during the studio's name showing, but not usually before it's even shows, right?
Exactly.
So that was kind of confusing.
It's very jarring. Like, what the hell? And it makes me think because do you know how they said like that there's these, you probably don't remember this, but they said that there's navigators that help travel through space and they use the spice?
Of course I remember that. That's why everyone's there mining the spice.
Right. Well, they didn't show any of the navigators, and they're in the very beginning of the book, very beginning of the other two movies with the Emperor, and they just cut all that shit out in this one. They made it very like streamlined, you know?
I don't care. I don't need to see the navigators.
Yeah.
I heard that as like the reason everybody's dying for the spice.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's all I needed to hear. I guess I didn't need to see him.
Yeah, I think they did it, and this could be my closing thoughts. I think they did an excellent job taking something that's so complex, so many things going on. I mean, I could have talked to you for another hour about all the Dune stuff easily, but they were able to like trim it down, and this is probably as close as you're going to get to mainstream for Dune ever. And I still feel like it's asking a lot of a mainstream audience.
Okay. So that's a compliment to make it understandable.
Accessible.
Yeah, because I understood it, and I don't know anything about all this Dune stuff. I did have some questions, and there's certain, like I said, things I wish they went into more.
Yeah.
Like I think the stuff with the mom and the Bene Jesuits. Jesuit. You know why? Because there's a Catholic order called the Jesuits, and it's like throwing me off.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think all that was real interesting, and I would like to hear more about that.
Yeah. Well, guess what? Your prayers have been answered. I did a little research, and it turns out they're actually making a Dune series. It's probably going to be on HBO Max, and it's called Dune: The Sisterhood. So it's probably just about them.
Okay.
I'm sure you're just dying for that to come out.
I would be interested in that topic.
Yeah. Cool.
We'll see.
Yeah. All right. Well, we had a pretty lengthy discussion about this movie. We waited a long time for it to come out, but I'm really glad that you came to the theater with me to see it, and then we had a chance to talk about it tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now he has to go see Licorice Pizza with me.
Hey, I'll cover that on here with you. Absolutely.
That's what I'm excited about.
Yeah. Good trailer for that with some Bowie in there too. All right, guys. So until next week, we will see you guys real soon.